Some decisions in life define who we are. The choice to sacrifice something valuable for the person you love. The belief that family comes first, no matter what. But what happens when that sacrifice is met with deliberate destruction? When a gesture of pure love becomes the epicenter of a family war that nobody saw coming? This is the story of a man who sold his car to buy his wife a $5,132 limited edition camera, a piece of equipment she had dreamed about for years, a symbol of his devotion and her passion. And this is also the story of how his nephew deliberately dropped that camera into the backyard pool, shattering not just an expensive piece of equipment, but the very foundation of family trust. What you are about to hear involves sacrifice, betrayal, confrontation, and consequences that nobody could have predicted. This is not just about a camera. This is about what happens when good intentions collide with malice, when patience runs out, and when families are forced to choose sides in a conflict that should never have happened. Stay with us until the end, because the resolution of this story will surprise you, and we want to know what you would have done in this impossible situation. The decision was not made lightly. For months, he had been watching his wife pore over photography forums, watching review videos, and visiting camera stores just to hold the model she dreamed about. A limited edition professional camera that only 500 units were produced worldwide. She never asked for it. She knew the price was impossible for their current situation. But he saw the way her eyes lit up whenever she talked about it. They lived in a modest two-bedroom house in suburban Ohio. He worked as an insurance adjuster. She was a freelance photographer who mostly shot weddings and local events. They had one car between them, a reliable sedan that he used to commute 40 minutes each way to the office. She worked from home most days, editing photos and managing bookings. The idea came to him during a particularly difficult week. He had been handling a complicated claim involving a family who had lost everything in a house fire. Watching them sift through the ashes of their former lives, trying to find anything salvageable, made him think about what truly mattered. He came home that evening, looked at his wife editing photos on her aging equipment, and made a decision that would change everything. He would sell the car, use public transportation, carpool with colleagues, whatever it took, because seeing her face light up when she unwrapped that camera would be worth every inconvenience. It took 3 weeks to arrange everything. He found a buyer for the car through a colleague's brother. The price was fair, though lower than he had hoped. He set aside money for a decent used bicycle to get to the bus stop. He researched the camera obsessively, finding an authorized dealer 2 states away who had one of the limited edition units still available. He coordinated delivery, insurance, everything. The night he gave it to her was in their small living room. No special occasion, just a random Tuesday evening in March. He had hidden the box in the garage. When he brought it in, she thought it was photography equipment he was borrowing from a client. Then she saw the brand name on the box. Her hands started shaking before she even opened it. When she lifted the lid and saw the limited edition markings, the serial number stamped on the body, she actually gasped. She looked at him with tears streaming down her face and asked how. He told her he sold the car. She started to protest, to say it was too much, but he stopped her. He told her that every morning he spent on the bus would be worth it to see her create art with the tool she deserved. They spent that entire evening exploring every feature of the camera. She mounted her best lens, adjusted settings, took test shots of everything in the house. The kitchen table, the living room lamp. Him, sitting on the couch with the biggest smile he had worn in months. She said it felt like holding a piece of the future, like everything she had worked toward as a photographer was finally real. The next few weeks were magical. She took that camera everywhere. Sunrise shoots at the local park, downtown architectural photography. She even landed 2 high-end wedding bookings, specifically because clients saw the quality of work she could produce with professional equipment. She treated that camera like it was made of glass and gold. a custom padded case, lens cleaning kit. She watched tutorial videos every night to master every function. He adjusted to life without the car. The bus commute was longer, but he used the time to read. Colleagues who lived nearby offered rides when weather was bad. His wife drove him when she could. They joked about being a one-car household, about how European it made them feel. In truth, he never regretted it for a second, not when he saw her come alive behind that viewfinder. Everything was perfect. Until his sister called to say she needed a favor. His sister lived 3 hours away in Pennsylvania. She was a single mother to a 12-year-old boy. Their relationship had always been complicated. She was younger by 5 years and had always been the family favorite growing up. Their parents had passed away years ago, but the dynamics established in childhood never quite disappeared. She called when she needed something. He helped, because that is what family does. The favor was simple on the surface. She had a work conference that weekend, mandatory attendance, and her usual babysitter had fallen through. Could her son stay with them for 3 days, Friday afternoon through Monday morning? He would be no trouble. He could sleep on the couch. They had a pool in the backyard. The boy loved swimming. He hesitated, not because he did not want to help, but because of history. His nephew had behavior issues. Nothing violent, but a pattern of manipulation and entitlement that made every visit tense. The previous Thanksgiving, the boy had deliberately broken a decorative plate that belonged to his wife's grandmother, then claimed it was an accident. Before that, he had gone through their bedroom drawers without permission, later justifying it as looking for a phone charger. His wife was less enthusiastic about the visit. She reminded him of past incidents. She mentioned that the boy showed no remorse when confronted, but she also knew his sister had nobody else to turn to. They agreed on strict ground rules. The nephew would be respectful. He would ask before touching anything. He would not go into their bedroom or home office, and absolutely under no circumstances was he to touch the camera equipment. His sister dropped the boy off Friday evening. She was dressed professionally, clearly in a hurry to get to her conference hotel. She thanked them profusely, promised her son would behave, and was gone in under 10 minutes. The boy barely looked up from his phone during the entire exchange. That first night was quiet. They ordered pizza, watched a movie. The nephew was polite but distant. He spent most of the evening on his phone, occasionally asking when he could use the pool. They told him tomorrow after breakfast. Saturday morning started normally. His wife made pancakes. The nephew ate without much conversation. Around 10 in the morning, they told him he could swim. The backyard pool was small, but well maintained. They had basic safety rules. No running on the deck, no diving in the shallow end. Tell us if you need anything. His wife brought her camera outside, not to photograph the nephew, but because the morning light was perfect and she wanted to practice shooting their garden from different angles. She set up at the patio table, switching lenses, adjusting settings. The nephew watched from the pool. He asked what kind of camera it was. She explained briefly, not wanting to bore him. She mentioned it was very expensive and very special. That should have been the warning sign. The way his eyes fixed on the equipment. The way he asked how much it cost. When she deflected the question, he pushed. More than 1,000, more than 2,000. She finally said yes, it was very expensive, and changed the subject. Around noon, his wife went inside to start preparing lunch. She asked him to watch the nephew while she cooked. He was in the living room, catching up on work emails on his laptop. Through the window he could see his nephew in the pool, floating on his back. Everything seemed fine. What he did not see was the moment his nephew climbed out of the pool, dried his hands on a towel, walked to the patio table where the camera sat in its case. What he did not see was his nephew looking toward the house, confirming nobody was watching. What he did not see was the deliberate decision being made. He heard his wife scream from the kitchen, not a startled yelp, but a sound of pure anguish that made him drop his laptop and run. By the time he reached the back door, he saw his nephew standing at the edge of the pool, arms at his sides, watching the ripples in the water settle. And there, at the bottom of the deep end, was the camera. No case, no protection, just sinking slowly to the tile floor. His wife was already outside, frozen on the patio. She was staring at the pool, then at her nephew, then back at the pool. He pushed past her and dove in, fully clothed. The water was cold. He grabbed the camera, brought it to the surface, already knowing it was too late. Water poured from the lens mount. The screen was dead. $5,132 sitting in his hands, destroyed. When he climbed out of the pool, dripping and furious, his nephew was still standing there. No panic, no apology, just watching. He asked the only question that mattered. Why? Why did you do this? The boy shrugged, said he wanted to see if it would float, said it was just sitting there, said he did not think it would be a big deal. That was when his wife made a sound he had never heard before, a combination of sobbing and rage. She lunged toward the nephew, but he caught her, held her back. He told the boy to go inside, to go to the living room and not move. The nephew walked past them, still showing no emotion, no understanding of what he had done. They stood in the backyard, his wife shaking in his arms, both of them soaked, staring at the ruined camera on the patio table. The lens was full of water, the body was dripping, the limited edition that he had sacrificed his car to buy, the tool that had brought her so much joy, gone. But this was only the beginning, because what happened next would tear their family apart in ways that camera never could. He placed the camera carefully on the patio table, like it was a body that deserved dignity even in death. Water continued to drip from every opening, forming a small pool on the glass surface. His wife was trembling, not from cold but from shock. She kept saying she did not understand. She kept asking why. They went inside, still dripping pool water across the kitchen floor. The nephew was sitting on the living room couch exactly where he had been told to wait. He was back on his phone, scrolling through something, completely calm. When they entered the room, he looked up with an expression that can only be described as bored curiosity. He tried to keep his voice level. He asked again, slowly, deliberately, "Why did you take the camera? Why did you throw it in the pool?" The nephew set his phone down with theatrical patience, like he was dealing with unreasonable adults. He said the camera was just sitting there. He said he wanted to see what would happen. He said they were making too big a deal about it. It was just a camera. His wife lost control. She started shouting, asking if he understood that camera cost more than $5,000, that his uncle had sold his car to buy it, that it was irreplaceable. The nephew's expression shifted then, not to remorse, but to something closer to satisfaction. He said, if it was so important, maybe they should not have left it outside where anyone could touch it. That response crystallized everything. This was not an accident. This was not curiosity. This was deliberate. This was a 12-year-old boy who had destroyed something precious and was now blaming them for his actions. He felt something break inside him, not just anger, but the complete severing of patience that had been strained for years. He called his sister. The call went to voicemail. He left a message, keeping his voice as steady as possible. There had been an incident. She needed to call back immediately. It was about her son and something he had destroyed. He did not mention the camera specifically. He wanted to have that conversation when he could hear her voice. His sister called back 40 minutes later. In the intervening time, the nephew had been sent to the guest room. His wife was in their bedroom with the door closed. He was sitting in the kitchen, staring at the ruined camera on the table, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. When his sister called, she sounded irritated before he even explained. She asked if this was really so important that it could not wait until Monday. He told her what happened, every detail. The camera outside. Her son deliberately taking it. The throw into the pool, the complete lack of remorse, the blaming. There was a long pause. Then his sister said something that made his blood run cold. She asked if they had been watching her son properly. She suggested that maybe if they had been supervising him, this would not have happened. She implied that leaving expensive equipment around a child was irresponsible. He could not believe what he was hearing. He told her that her son was 12 years old, not a toddler. That basic respect for other people's property should be understood by that age, that this was not about supervision, it was about deliberate destruction. She cut him off. She said he was being dramatic. She said kids break things. She said she was at a mandatory conference and could not leave. She would deal with it when she picked up her son on Monday. He told her no. He told her she needed to come get her son today, that he would not spend another night under their roof. She accused him of overreacting. She brought up their childhood, implying he had always been too rigid, too unforgiving. She suggested his wife was influencing him. She said things that revealed years of resentment he had never fully acknowledged. The conversation escalated. Voices raised, old wounds opened. She defended her son's behavior by attacking his character. He pointed out patterns she had been ignoring for years. She accused him of never accepting her child. He reminded her of every incident, every broken boundary, every time he had swallowed his frustration for the sake of family peace. Finally, she said something unforgivable. She said maybe the camera getting destroyed was karma for him always judging her parenting, that maybe this would teach him humility, that maybe he and his wife needed to learn that material possessions were not as important as family. He hung up. His hands were shaking. In that moment, he realized that this was not just about a camera anymore. This was about years of enabling, of excusing, of pretending that bad behavior would somehow correct itself if they just remained patient. This was about a sister who valued her convenience over accountability. This was about a nephew who had learned that consequences were negotiable. His wife emerged from the bedroom. She had heard parts of the conversation. She asked what they were going to do. He told her the truth. His sister was not coming. She expected them to keep her son until Monday. She blamed them for what happened. His wife sat down at the kitchen table, picked up the destroyed camera, and started crying again. Not angry tears this time. Defeated tears. They made a decision together. They would not wait until Monday. They would not continue this charade of family harmony. They called his sister back. This time, he put the phone on speaker so his wife could hear everything. He told his sister she had two options. She could leave her conference and pick up her son by 8 p.m. that evening, or he would drive the boy to a local police station and explain that he was destroying property and his legal guardian was refusing to take responsibility. His sister called him insane. She said he was threatening her with police over an accident. He corrected her. Not an accident. Deliberate destruction. And if she truly believed her son had done nothing wrong, she should have no problem coming to collect him and dealing with the situation properly. She started yelling, said she would never forgive him, said he was destroying their family, said their parents would be ashamed. He responded calmly. He said their parents would be ashamed of a mother who refused to discipline her child, who blamed victims for her son's actions, who valued a work conference over accountability. He gave her until 8 p.m. Then he hung up. The nephew, who had been listening from the guest room, came out and asked what was happening. He told the boy the truth. His mother was coming to get him. The visit was over. The nephew's facade finally cracked. He started arguing, said it was not fair, said they were being mean, said he did not mean for this to happen. But still, even then, no real apology. No acknowledgement of responsibility, just anger at facing consequences. His sister arrived at 7:45 that evening. She did not come to the door. She texted that she was outside. He walked the nephew out with his overnight bag. His sister did not get out of the car. Through the passenger window, she glared at him with pure hatred. The nephew got in the back seat. She drove away without a word. He stood in the driveway, watching the taillights disappear, knowing that whatever relationship he had with his sister was now permanently damaged, maybe destroyed entirely. He walked back inside. His wife was still at the kitchen table holding the camera. He sat next to her. They did not speak for a long time. The silence was broken by a question she asked quietly. "What do we do now?" He did not have an answer, but he knew one thing. This was not over. Not by a long way. Sunday morning arrived with a heaviness that seemed to fill every room of the house. Neither of them had slept well. His wife had spent most of the night researching whether water-damaged cameras could be repaired. Every forum, every article, every expert opinion said the same thing. Submerged electronic equipment, especially high-end cameras with complex circuitry, rarely survived. Even if individual components could be salvaged, the cost of repairs often exceeded the original value, and this was a limited edition. Parts would be impossible to find. He had spent the night processing what had happened with his sister, the way she had defended the indefensible, the way she had attacked him rather than address her son's behavior. He kept replaying moments from their childhood, searching for the origin point of this dynamic. When had she started believing that her choices were beyond criticism? When had she decided that consequences were something other people dealt with? Sunday afternoon brought the first text message. It was from his sister, but the tone was entirely different from the previous day. She had clearly spent the night consulting with someone, possibly a friend or relative, because the message was calculated and cold. She stated that her son had not intentionally destroyed the camera. She claimed it was an accident caused by inadequate supervision. She demanded an apology for how she and her son had been treated. She mentioned that she was considering what legal options might be available to her regarding the emotional distress caused to her child. He showed the message to his wife. They both recognized it for what it was, an attempt to rewrite the narrative, to position her son as the victim, to make them the aggressors. His wife asked if they should respond. He said no, not yet. They needed to think strategically. Monday brought clarity. He took the day off work and they drove to the camera store where he had originally purchased the equipment. The manager, a man in his 50s who had helped with the original sale, remembered them immediately. He listened to the entire story. When they showed him the water-damaged camera, he examined it carefully, shaking his head. He confirmed what they already knew. Total loss. No repair possible. No warranty coverage for water damage. No replacement units available anywhere in the country. The limited edition run had sold out months ago, but then the manager said something important. He asked if they had considered filing a police report, not for criminal charges, but for documentation purposes. If they intended to pursue any kind of restitution, they would need an official record of the incident. He also mentioned that deliberate destruction of property over a certain value threshold was legally significant. $5,132 definitely qualified. They drove to the local police station. The process was uncomfortable. Reporting a family member, even a nephew, felt like crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. But the officer who took their statement was professional and understanding. He asked detailed questions. Were there witnesses? Yes, his wife had seen the aftermath immediately. Was the nephew alone with the camera? Yes. Had he been given explicit instructions not to touch it? Yes. Was there any indication this was accidental? No. Based on the nephew's own words, he had deliberately taken the camera and thrown it in the pool. The officer explained that this qualified as criminal mischief, potentially rising to the level of a felony given the value. However, because the perpetrator was a minor, the process would be different. They could file a report, which would create a record. If they wanted to pursue criminal charges, that would go through juvenile court and would likely result in mandatory counseling and restitution rather than serious penalties. If they wanted to pursue civil action, they could sue his sister in small claims court for the value of the camera. They filed the report. The officer gave them a case number and documentation. As they left the station, his wife asked what they were going to do with it. He said he did not know yet, but having the documentation meant they had options. That evening his sister called, not texted, called. Her voice was shaking with rage. Someone had told her about the police report, probably someone who worked at the station and knew the family. She screamed that he had reported her son to the police, that he was trying to give her child a criminal record, that he was destroying a 12-year-old's future over a camera, that he was the worst brother anyone could have. He let her finish. Then he asked her one question. Was she planning to pay for the camera her son destroyed? The line went silent. Then she said something that revealed everything. She said she could not afford it. She said she was barely making ends meet. She said $5,000 might as well be $50,000. She said if he really loved his nephew, he would understand that this was too much to expect. He felt something shift, not anger anymore, something colder. Understanding. She had no intention of taking responsibility. She never had. The anger, the defensiveness, the attacks on his character, all of it was a smokescreen to avoid accountability. She expected him to absorb the loss because family was supposed to forgive, because he was supposed to be the bigger person, because that was the role he had always played. He told her that her financial situation was not his responsibility, that her son had made a choice with expensive consequences, that she had raised a child who deliberately destroyed other people's property and showed no remorse, that this was a teaching moment she was refusing to acknowledge. He told her he would be filing a civil suit for the full value of the camera, plus the cost of his lost car transportation arrangements during the time the camera was in use. She started crying. Not quiet tears, but desperate sobbing. She begged him not to do this. She said it would ruin her. She said she would lose her house. She said her son would suffer. She played every emotional card available. She brought up their parents. She brought up memories from childhood. She asked how he could do this to family. His wife took the phone from him. In a voice steady and clear, she said that family works both ways, that respect is not optional, that love does not mean enabling destructive behavior. She said that his sister had taught her son that actions do not have consequences, that authority figures could be manipulated, that victims could be blamed. She said those lessons would destroy that boy's life, far more than paying for a camera he destroyed. His sister hung up. Minutes later, texts started arriving from other family members. An aunt, 2 cousins. His sister had clearly reached out to everyone she could, presenting a version of events where they were monsters punishing a child over an accident. The messages ranged from disappointment to outrage. Nobody had asked for their side of the story. Nobody had questioned why a 12-year-old would deliberately destroy a camera. Everyone had simply accepted his sister's narrative and joined her campaign of guilt. He blocked the numbers. All of them. His wife did the same. They sat together on the couch, the destroyed camera still on the kitchen table, and made peace with what this meant. They would file the civil suit. They would pursue full restitution, and they would accept that much of their extended family would side against them. Because some battles are worth the cost. Some lines once crossed must have consequences, and some lessons, no matter how painful, must be taught. The civil suit was filed 3 weeks later. The process was surprisingly straightforward. Small claims court in their county had a maximum claim limit of $10,000. They filed for $5,132 for the camera, plus an additional $800 for documented expenses related to the incident, including the police report filing fee, lost wages from taking time to handle the situation, and the cost of transportation alternatives during the period the camera was being used for paid work. His sister was served with papers at her workplace. She called him immediately hysterical, asking if he was really going through with this. He told her yes. She asked what she was supposed to do. He told her she had 3 options. She could accept responsibility and arrange a payment plan. She could appear in court and present her defense, or she could ignore the summons and face a default judgment. The choice was hers. She chose to fight it. She hired an attorney, which surprised him given her claims of being financially struggling. The attorney sent a letter arguing that the nephew was a minor, acting without full understanding of consequences, that the camera had been left unsupervised in an area where a child was playing, and that the plaintiffs bore some responsibility for the loss. The letter also implied that pursuing legal action against a child was morally questionable, and that any judge would see through this vindictive behavior. His response was simple. He compiled documentation, photos of the camera in its case on the patio table, clearly separate from the pool area, written statements from both him and his wife detailing the explicit instructions given to the nephew. The nephew's own words, documented in their police report, admitting he took the camera deliberately to see what would happen. Records from the camera store showing the limited edition status and irreplaceable nature of the equipment. Bank statements showing the sale of his car and the purchase of the camera. Screenshots of his wife's business calendar showing cancelled bookings due to lack of equipment. The court date was set for 2 months later. During that time, his sister launched a full family pressure campaign. She posted on social media about being sued by her own brother. She framed the situation as a wealthy couple attacking a struggling single mother over an accident. She shared photos of her son looking sad, with captions about how traumatic it was for a child to be involved in legal proceedings. Several family members shared her posts. Some added their own commentary about greed and lost family values. He and his wife stayed silent publicly. They did not respond to social media posts. They did not engage with family members who reached out with criticism. They focused on their case and on rebuilding what had been lost. His wife had borrowed a basic camera from a colleague and was slowly rebuilding her business. He had purchased a cheap used car with money from their emergency fund. Life continued, but everything felt heavier. The court date arrived on a grey Tuesday morning in June. The courtroom was small, informal, designed for quick resolution of minor civil disputes. His sister arrived with her attorney and her son. The nephew looked uncomfortable in dress clothes, but his expression was still that same mixture of defiance and indifference. The judge, a woman in her 60s with the tired eyes of someone who had seen everything, reviewed the documentation from both sides. She asked the nephew directly if he had taken the camera. He said yes. She asked if anyone had given him permission. He said no. She asked why he did it. He gave the same answer. He wanted to see what would happen. The judge asked the nephew if he understood that the camera was expensive. He said yes. She asked if he understood that taking something without permission and destroying it was wrong. He hesitated, looked at his mother, then said he guessed so. The judge asked if he had apologized. The courtroom went silent. His sister's attorney objected, saying the emotional state of the minor was not relevant to liability. The judge overruled the objection and repeated the question. The nephew said he had not apologized because he did not think it was that big of a deal. The judge's expression hardened. She asked his sister if she had taught her son to apologize when he did something wrong. His sister began to say that the situation was complicated, but the judge cut her off. She said it was actually very simple. A child took property without permission and destroyed it. The child's parent was legally responsible for the actions of her minor child. The question was not whether liability existed, but whether the claimed damages were accurate. The judge reviewed the documentation of the camera's value, the sale of the car, the business impact. She asked his sister's attorney if he disputed any of the financial claims. The attorney argued that the full value should not be awarded because the plaintiffs had contributed to the situation by leaving the camera accessible. The judge asked if the attorney was seriously suggesting that leaving property in your own backyard, in a case, on a table, constituted negligence. The attorney backed down. The judgment took less than 10 minutes. The court found in favor of the plaintiffs. Full value of the camera, full documented expenses, payment plan to be established with 90 days for first payment. Failure to comply would result in wage garnishment. The judge added something unusual at the end. She looked directly at the nephew and said that actions have consequences, that respecting other people's property was not optional, that at 12 years old, he was old enough to understand right and wrong. She said she hoped this experience taught him something valuable, but based on his responses, she was not confident it would. His sister left the courtroom without looking at him. Her attorney provided information about the payment plan setup. The first payment would be due in 3 months. It would take 2 years to pay off the full judgment at the court-mandated installment rate. Outside the courthouse, his wife asked how he felt. He said he felt tired, not victorious, not vindicated, just tired. They had won, but the cost had been their extended family. They would never attend another Thanksgiving with his sister. The nephew would grow up hearing stories about the uncle who sued them. Cousins would repeat the narrative that they were greedy and cruel. The truth would become irrelevant compared to the story his sister would tell. But as they drove home, something else became clear. The weight that had been pressing on him for months was lighter. The years of swallowing frustration, of accepting bad behavior for the sake of peace, of being the one who always compromised, all of that was finished. They had drawn a line. They had enforced a boundary. They had said that some actions were unacceptable, regardless of family ties. His wife's photography business slowly recovered. She saved money and eventually purchased a newer model camera, not the limited edition, but professional quality. She never forgot the original, the one he had sacrificed his car to buy, but she stopped dwelling on what was lost. She focused on what she was building. He rebuilt his relationship with the colleagues who had supported him during the carless months. He found that the experience had revealed who truly understood loyalty and sacrifice. Some friendships deepened, others faded away. Both outcomes were valuable in their own way. The payment plan payments arrived sporadically, sometimes on time, sometimes late, requiring court enforcement. Each payment was a reminder of the cost of setting boundaries, not just the financial cost to his sister, but the relationship cost to everyone involved. 2 years after the incident, the final payment arrived. The judgment was satisfied. He transferred his half to his wife with a note. This money represents something more than a camera. It represents the principle that love does not require accepting disrespect. That family does not mean unlimited forgiveness without accountability. That sometimes the hardest decision is the right one. They used the money to fund a small photography exhibition of her work. A public gallery show featuring 50 prints shot over the previous 2 years. The show was titled Resilience. In the corner of the gallery on a small placard was the dedication, "For those who sacrifice, for those who rebuild, and for those who understand that value is not always measured in dollars." His sister never attended. Neither did any of the family members who had sided with her. But the gallery was full that opening night. Friends, clients, colleagues. People who understood that the true story was not about a camera destroyed in a pool. It was about what you do after destruction, how you rebuild, how you hold your ground when the world insists you should surrender. Years later, when people asked about the camera incident, he gave a simple answer. He said that his nephew taught him an important lesson, that tolerance has limits, that kindness does not require self-sacrifice beyond reason. That sometimes protecting what matters means accepting that not everyone will understand or agree. The nephew is 17 now. He has not spoken to his uncle since that courtroom day. His mother tells people that her brother ruined their family over a material possession. She teaches her son that they were the victims of cruelty. The narrative has calcified into family mythology. The truth is no longer relevant to most people who hear the story. But truth has a way of revealing itself over time. The nephew has struggled with relationships, with authority, with accepting responsibility for his actions. His mother wonders why. She asks teachers and counselors why her son seems unable to understand consequences. She never connects it to the lesson she failed to teach him when he was 12, the lesson that destruction has costs, that victims deserve justice, that family love does not erase accountability. In the end, the story is not about a camera. It never was. It is about the moment when you decide what kind of person you will be when tested. When you choose between comfortable peace and necessary conflict, when you weigh the cost of standing firm against the cost of bending one more time. He sold his car to buy his wife a camera because love sometimes means sacrifice. His nephew threw it in the pool because some people are taught they are exempt from consequences. He sued for restitution because some lessons must be taught, even when teaching them breaks what cannot be repaired. And if he had to make that choice again, knowing everything that followed, he would make the same decision. Because principles are not principles unless they cost something. And some costs, no matter how high, are the price of living with integrity. This story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about family, responsibility, and justice. When does patience become enabling? When does forgiveness become complicity? How do we balance love for family with the need for accountability? These are not easy questions, and there are no universal answers. We want to hear from you. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have filed the police report? Would you have pursued the lawsuit? Do you think the response was justified, or did it go too far? How would you have handled a family member who refused to take responsibility for their child's deliberate actions? Share your honest thoughts in the comments below. This is a community built on real conversation about difficult situations, and your perspective matters. If this story made you think, if it challenged your assumptions about family dynamics and responsibility, please subscribe to this channel. We bring you real stories about real people facing impossible choices. Stories that do not have easy answers. Stories that reflect the complexity of human relationships and the difficult decisions we all face when values collide with loyalty. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And before you go, click on the next video recommended to you. We have another powerful story about family boundaries, sacrifice, and the unexpected consequences of doing the right thing. Thank you for being part of this community. Your engagement, your comments, and your willingness to discuss these difficult topics make this channel what it is. We will see you in the next story.